what I'm going to do now is I'm going to interview Captain Matan Horowitz. Captain Matan Horowitz, as I knew him when I first met him, but he's no longer a captain, he's a major. He's a major in the reserves of the Israel Defense Forces. He's married with 3 children. Met his wife during his service, which we will get into.
Right after.
Right after?
We met during service.
You met during service, and what happened right after?
Well, she got me.
There you go. So she got you. And there you go. So Matan's going to raise his voice.
Sure.
It's a great privilege for me because he was my captain. He was my captain in the Israel Defense Forces. I've interviewed him once before, but I don't frankly remember the answers. So this is going to be a very, very candid interview. And the reason that I don't really remember the answers is because I believe that once someone's your captain, they're probably your captain forever. And it carries on like that. And I found it a high privilege to be able to interview him then. I find it a high privilege to be able to interview him now.
Well, thank you.
And I know that he's going to be very, very honest in his responses, and we're going to try and focus not upon the military aspects, so that will be a part of this, but we want to get into the issues of service, because this is something we've spoken about, service in this country. What does it mean to serve as a conscript? What does it mean to serve as a reservist? And I think what I'd like to do is start with just a little bit about your background, because it's relevant to this group. This group, unlike in the States of Israel, in the IDF, undertake an undergraduate degree at a military academy, and thereafter they become officers in the United States Armed Forces. Now that doesn't really exist, with a few exceptions in the IDF. They all start from nowhere. There are some exceptions.
We'll speak about that.
But you came from, and of course if you want to say anything preliminary.
I'm closer to them.
Right.
In that matters, but
correct. You have a bit of a unique start in the military, so talk about that if you would, and I'm sure you want to make some preliminary comments as well.
Right. So first, I'll start at the end. I apologize for my English. I haven't had too many options to practice it. It's way worse than IELTS, and you will all have to be generous with me. If I'm silent, meaning that I'm going through my vocabulary, searching for the right word, I probably won't find it. And so, once again, I sincerely apologize, and this is my disclaimer. I've been living in Israel for all of my life. It's 37 years now. At the age of 14, I joined the Junior Military Academy, which basically deals with field commanders, future field commanders. Unlike in the United States, it took my high school years, my 4 high school years, to go through this junior academy. And then I drafted as a regular soldier. No privileges, no special terms, just with better basic training as a soldier, and better understanding of the military profession, with a view for the future to become an officer and to serve several years. The basic service of someone who graduated this junior academy is 3 more years, meaning 6 years total. This is the minimum. I left or released after 7 years of military service. I still have friends. My class in the junior academy is one of the more successful. We have 4 commanders who are on their way to be colonels, and that's a great honor for us. And I think it's great success. But usually, when you take a class of junior academies, you look to achieve 1 or 2 colonels. So this is very successful in these terms. And after I finished my high school years, I joined the Nahal Brigade. Served there from soldier to a commander to an officer, right up to a company commander. Released as a company commander after Lebanon war and an extra time. And then joined the reservist brigade, also infantry. Not too smart. And I'm there still, being the company commander. These days I'm in a role that deals with headquarters within the battalion. I'm serving around from 30 to 40 years days a year. Great joy. This is my annual vacation, usually. Time I'm free from kids and duties, or better duties.
Yeah, good catch.
And well, that's me. Okay, so I'm sure you've heard. I'm relying on Rosita and Ben, Master Rosita, that you've met really important people in Israel. You spoke to generals. I believe you spoke to too many politicians. You've heard too many opinions, and my main goal here is to hear your concerns or your dilemmas and try to figure them through my very small experience in that field.
So just a quick sound check. Can everybody hear at the back? Can you hear without a problem, Steph and Liz? Okay, great. So I want to go a step back. I understand from you, and this goes to the heart of service in this country, that your commitment to being an officer in the IDF actually stemmed from a discussion with your father, that your father was an officer. Tell us a little bit about that to begin with. And also, there's this idea that you wanted to be an officer from the outset. But I'd like to know how the son of an officer hears about service in the IDF around the dinner table, in the day-to-day conversations that a father has with son, a mother with son and daughter. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, yes, my father is also an officer. Used to be well, he's still an officer because it's a matter of a mindset. So he's still an officer in his mindset, but it's no longer active. And when I grew up, and when I was around 9 or 8 years of age, he was a battalion commander in reserves. And our whole family lives surrounded this issue, since there were no cellular phones or any way of connections. And he would have gone to 1, 2, 3 weeks away, and we had to deal with that. And we had the privilege to see him coming home with uniform, which for a kid who usually sees his father with his work outfit, he's a farmer, so he usually goes with blue shirt and pants, and to see him in uniform is an issue. It's a matter of pride. It's a matter of pride, because you know he's someone. You know he makes a effect, or you feel like, because not many others do so. And conversations around table deal with matters of military. And when he had to do meetings with his officers, and he would usually bring them home. And then you see a regular home, sitting there, kids around, and a bunch of army officers sits around the plastic table and deal with personnel, deals with operational plans. And so you walk around their legs, you try to hear the language, you try to catch things. And if you're very lucky, and I was one of them, he took me to visit the battalion in one of their Miluim courses in the Golan Heights. So I drove with him through the forts and met soldiers, and well, I'll state it like that. Let me just remember the name. Well, he plays for the Golden States, Stephen Curry. Part of him being a great basketball player lays back in the time he watched his father playing or being coached by his father. So if you take this and compare it to my life, so I saw my father command. I saw my father deal with people. And if you want or don't want, it gets into you. You learn tactics, or you learn manners of dealing with people, even if you didn't sit and learn, but it sits somewhere in the back of your mind. And speaking with him and being mentored by an officer, but an experienced officer, one who fought in actual conventional wars, not playing in the West Bank like we did, gives you a lot of tools and a lot of strength to go through challenges. So basically, I'm Stefan, and my father is Del.
So you draft into the IDF, you become a regular soldier, you climb the chain of command. You spent a lot of time in Hebron.
Too many.
And in actual fact, when I was under your command and we were serving in Hebron, one of the first things that was mentioned to me, I'm jumping ahead a bit and then I'll come back, was that you had a nickname there in Hebron, and the nickname was that they used to call you the Sheriff of Hebron. And I want to know why that is. Where did that come from, this unique understanding that you had of the Gizra, of the area in Hebron?
Well, Hebron, well, I'll go larger, okay? I think that Israel is a microcosmos of the entire world, okay? Because we have the desert and we have high mountains and snow and flouriship. We actually now sit in Tel Aviv, which is also mini Manhattan and mini Berlin, in several streets mini Paris. If you go to the Yarkon, I wouldn't call it river, but creek, you'll feel on the Thames. Okay, so Israel is a microcosmos of the world, and I think that Hebron is a microcosmos of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because you have everything there in small scale. And it came that I've been there through several times, through the evolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the Israeli-Palestinian relations within the city, because I saw it storming, and I saw times of curfew, and I saw times of economical flouriship, and I know people. You've ever heard of the name of a person called Itamar Ben Gvir? He was almost elected these elections, and he's part of the extreme right party. And I remember him as a teenager running in the streets of Hebron. And I grew up in a manner of ideology or evolution with those people, and I knew them from small to more influential. Thank you. And I saw it also on the Palestinian side. Well, I saw them struggling, I saw them understanding, I saw them, you could say, enjoying. And I knew the streets, and I knew what hurts, and I knew what can make them feel secure. And so sheriff is a good word. I felt home. I felt like home. Whenever we were called to Hebron, I said, okay, this I can know. This I know. This I manage. This I can control. Mm-hmm. Other than other cities or other areas that you know as much as they tell you, and you need to learn from the start. And in Hebron, my start was higher than others because it wasn't first start; it was layer on layer. And when we met there, it was my last or my fifth layer. Yeah. So it was established, pretty much.
So you take a whole group up to Hebron as your soldiers. I want to go back to when you first met your soldiers, because as a captain in the IDF, you actually took command not of a homogeneous group, but you took command of a very, very diverse group of individuals, because the IDF, for those of you who may not know this, is very much an immigrant military. It brings immigrants from Europe and from the United States and Great Britain and South America and all over the world, Australia, all over the world. And you, how old were you when you were a captain, when you started as a captain?
24.
24. How many times had you traveled overseas?
No.
How many times have you traveled overseas by 23?
3 times.
3 times. So you're 3 times, 23 years old, and you have to take command of an entire group of soldiers who come from all over the world. A bunch of them don't speak Hebrew. They're all, including me, they're all bound for...
One of them doesn't speak any Hebrew.
Right. They're all bound for service in a combat capacity in a few short months, and you have to get them ship-shape and ready to go. So sure. I remember my first conversation with you, and in that conversation you banned me from speaking English. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
Right. I was older than you.
I also remember asking you, from which part of Leeds are you?
That's right. That's right. That's right. And you knew that I was older than you and that I had to follow commands. So what did you decide was going to be the unifying ethos of the group, given that there are different languages, different backgrounds, different experiences, and you have to unify them? What was the one thing that you wanted to bring them all in line for by the time they finished training?
Well, first I've wanted to bring them all alive.
Right.
And therefore I've separated it into two sets of minds. When it comes to safety or firearms training, I allowed my commanders and my soldiers communicate in English or in French in order to make sure they understand the risks and the orders, because this is firearms. This is the one part. But the main part, the cultural part, is that I've understood I would never be able to control people in several languages and several cultures. That I have, if it fallen into my hand the right to set young soldiers into a national or a national ethos or a narrative, then it should be in the language we fought for. And therefore I've commanded my commanders and my soldiers that any connection would be in Hebrew. And it vectored two conclusions, two things. First, I could understand what they are saying. Second, it forced people to help each other, because if you are dependent one on the other, and he doesn't communicate with you, you will be the one suffering. So it's your motivation to help him enter the language and enter by entering in language. And my mother is a Hebrew teacher. My grandmother is a Hebrew teacher, and so it came that my wife is also a Hebrew teacher, Hebrew language teacher, and this and language is close to my heart. And I see language as a main issue that affects main effect of the cultural side. So when you control the language, you control the narrative, you control the ethos, and you communicate better, because under pressure, commanders would have been shout orders in Hebrew because this is their mother tongue. And if their soldiers would not understand what they're shouting, then you are in a pickle.
So 2005 is when you take command there. And in 2005, I don't think anybody thought that there was going to be a war.
True.
In the near term. There hadn't been a war since 1982, since the first Lebanon war. There had been operations, but not wars. And so I think that everybody thought that, and I remember it in basic training actually, I remember being told that we're learning to take a field and we're learning open combat, but the reality is we'll never use this. It's all going to be urban warfare and urban combat, and there aren't going to be any wars. Those days have gone. And then almost immediately after graduating advanced training comes along the Second Lebanon War.
Right.
And it's a complete surprise to Israel, it's a complete surprise to the senior branch of the defense establishment, and you are charged with leading 100 men in there, and your goal was to bring 100 men back there, and I have to tell you that
No,
you did.
my goal was to win.
Goal was to win, okay.
Bring back 100 back is a wish.
Is a wish.
But in sorry to cut you.
No, it's
You
important.
didn't ask the question, but it's important.
Yeah.
Because these guys are, and girls, you are all about to deal with people's lives, and you are to be part of military organizations, and you have to understand, and you have to accept that a military organization is a violent organization. It has violent objectives, whether you want it or not. And if you are unwilling to bear the thought that from your decision someone is about to get hurt, physically or not, then this is not the profession for you. So keep that in mind. Your goal is to win, is to win the small mission, is to win the big war. But your goal is winning, is bringing results. If you are lucky enough to bring back all your men in one piece, this is something we all wish. We wish that it would happen. Some of us succeed, some of us not, but it's not a matter of ability. It's more luck.
So the goal is to win, and the wish is to bring everybody back. So you have this responsibility to take 100 men into that war. There was a particular event that preceded that war that you found yourself in the midst of, which was the response to the firing at the Hammers. And I'd like you to talk about that, if you would, and then talk about how it quickly escalated to you leading your troops in, if you could.
I didn't understand fully that.
The beginnings of the war,
Right.
when the initial kidnappings took place, you were engaged in what
Okay.
went on there, and then the IDF was actually reluctant to go into war at the beginning, or I should say the government was reluctant to go into war. But there was this event that took place at the beginning. Can you just tell a little bit about that particular event when there was the fire and Goldwas and Regev were kidnapped, and then about the command to go and participate as a captain?
All right. So, as Ben said, we finished our basic training and advanced training, and we're set in the northern border, right next to the region where the kidnapping took place, and a day or two before the kidnapping actually were conducted, we were called to a different region, a different how would you say, Giza?
Different area.
Different area. Okay. And we were all folding and moving to that place. And the morning after, when we were briefing our soldiers and our commanders with regards to the new area, a soldier came in to the battalion commander with a small note saying, "Sir, there's been an event in the other area." Pretty much then I've understood that we're in a different situation. I've ordered my people to load everything back to the buses that just dropped them, and I said to my battalion commander, "I'm going to go there. Speak with me on the way and see where I need to go specifically, or where will I meet the other troops, because one of my friends and a company commander with his company were in the heart of the event, and I felt obligated to see if I can assist over there. And not only that, I've just finished about a month over there, and I felt I knew the area well enough to suggest my assistant. And so we went there. We've been stopped in an area not far away, and started preparing ourselves to the mission. We didn't have any mission. No one called us, but we were there because it's a matter of friendship. I knew he would need me. I somewhere felt that if he's there, I should be there. And it's also an informality that is also almost a religion, I think, in Israel. We sacred informality, so I'm sure during your tour here. So we've been there, we've been waiting for orders, and then one of my commanders came crying. Literally, tears dropped of him, saying, "I don't know what I'm going to do, what would happen, I'm stressed, we're taking soldiers, people could get hurt." So I took him aside and I slapped him, physically slapped him, grabbed his helmet and said, "Listen very carefully. You have responsibility for these people's lives. You can't show them any weakness at this moment. They are looking at you." And this is what I felt about myself. I knew that they are looking at me. If I'm stressed, then the whole unit is stressed up. And stressed people do mistakes. Well, we all do mistakes, but do stupid mistakes. If I'm frightened, then they wouldn't act when time calls. And I was stressed and frightened, but I know I should send a different message, and I should send them a message of strength and true belief in our cause. Not long after that, we've actually entered and went through fields, through black fields that were burned by bombs, and went from house to house, from village to village. We didn't know always our objective. We knew our missions, but we didn't always understand the big objective. But we knew that we are there, because if we weren't there, then people in the northern Israel would not be able to live safely and to live their life quietly. And I think I even told you that you didn't collect it, your falafel from Kiryat Shmona. Well, I told when we went to the border, we drove through Kiryat Shmona.
A town, Kiryat
A town,
Shmona, yeah.
sorry. And the streets were empty, no one outside, all blackened. So I told my people, look very carefully in the empty streets. And when we came back and we drove back and the streets were full, I stopped and told my soldiers, look around you. This is what you did. Those empty streets became full because of our action, because of us standing in the front line. And you can all feel that these civilians owe you their boring and regular life. I also say that the civilians owe you a falafel, but I never collected it.
So I hope people will ask a little bit about what it was for you to command in that and in other operations, but I actually want to talk about some other aspects, which is that in the Lebanon war, this is the first war in which you've served. You see the cost of war, you see the sacrifices made, and you were a single man during the Second Lebanon War. You're not married, you have no children, and during the intervening years between then and now, you of course are married. You're married to Stav, and you have 3 children, Yogev, Yotam, and Yair. And you're still called. You were called in Operation Protective Edge in 2014, I believe in Operation Pillar of Defense in 2012.
Right.
And it's very possible you'll be called again. What's the difference in mindset between a frightened, stressed, single man who's a captain in 2006 and a father and a husband who is called to duty now?
The main difference between a single and a married is that when you're a single, you think you know everything, and when you're married, you understand you don't know thing, or you don't control anything. Now, to be serious, it's different because when you are a young single officer, you can't understand the costs of war truly. And in 2012, I think it was, we were called to service. We've been prepared and trained to go into Gaza, and it was I only had Yair back then. He was about 1 year of age, and I had the opportunity to have like 3 or 4 hours of private time to go see them. We were trained not far away, about 30 minutes ride. So I took my jeep and went to say hello, maybe catch a dinner. And it was emotional, and Stav took a picture of me and Yair hugging or playing or something like that. and sent me that picture. And the night after, I couldn't sleep, thinking that this picture, maybe tomorrow, the picture that he will go in his wallet when he's grown up. And this is the way that he will remember his father. I couldn't get released of that thought. And only then, when I've understood the costs of war as a reservist, the power of belief in your cause that enables you to leave everything behind and stand in the front line, knowing that someone back home may grow up without a father figure, may grow up without his big or small or little brother, because this is the cost of securing our civilian and securing the people of Israel, and enforcing our leadership into take tough decisions. Our main problem is that in the last years, maybe including 2006, I would say, but it's a little different. We far too often pay prices and not following those prices with a diplomatic effort to ensure that we won't have to pay the price once again, because it's okay to pay prices. It's okay to sacrifice lives. First, like I said, it's part of life, and it's part of military life to sacrifice people or to be in danger, to be in that situation. But if you're not following that effort, that violent effort, with a diplomatical effort to go on, then you are doomed to pay this price once again soon. We've been there through the years. We can see it on the Israeli-Egyptian relations, that we've paid the last price, actual price we've paid was in 73, and since it was followed by a diplomatical effort that brought a peace agreement, and we are not paying these prices once more. And on the contrary, okay, we paid the same price in 73 in Syria. We didn't complete the diplomatical effort, and we're suffering from Hezbollah, which at first were funded and supported by Syria. These days it's the opposite, but they are just paying back debts. But they were supported by Syria, and we paid prices once, time and again, because we didn't complete that diplomatic effort, and we must understand it. And so, same goes in Gaza. We are paying prices, and we will continue. As a soldier, I'm telling you, and as an officer, I will be there whenever I'm called, no matter what. I'll be there because my people needs me, because this is the informal agreement between Matan, the civilian, and Matan, the officer, that the army would do everything, and reservists would be there when needed, no question asked. And we'll still continue being there, but we must understand that these prices would keep being paid as long as we're not conducting a diplomatic or economical solution that ensure that the prices are not being paid for nothing.
So my last question, and I'm going to open it to the audience, is the State of Israel went to elections. They were unable to form a coalition. They're now going back into elections. What do you, as a father, as an officer, expect from the leaders of the States of Israel? And I want you to wrap it up in a concise, short answer, so that we can get to the audience. I know it's complex, but if you had to say, this is what I expect of my leadership, what would those tenets be?
Hang on. What I expect my leaders is to be able to state a strategic goal and show us the way they think it's best to work towards that goal. And mostly I think I expect my leaders not to rely on the military, not to rely on our force, and to do their utmost to conduct to change the course, the funding from defense and security towards education, towards strong economic, and to be able to ensure our next generations strong and economically strong based country, that they could continue. And I think that by education and by economics, you limit the risk of defense, and you would be able to create something that people from outside wouldn't want to demolish, but would want to join.
Thank you. What were the characteristics you looked for in young leaders?
Well, part of being a company commander is understanding that one of your mission is truly train the next generation of commanders, not only train good soldiers, but also train the next generation of commanders, and that's an excellent question in that terms. The attributes that I looked for is someone who's true to himself, knows to say I was mistaken, knows to take decisions, because as a commander you don't need to be the fastest runner, you don't need to shoot directly or be the best at shooting, you don't need to be the best soldier. Okay, you don't need to. You should be a good soldier, but you don't need to be the best soldier, but you do need to be the best decision maker and the best analyzer. To analyze, to understand your option, and not only understand your options, but be able to take one of the options, say this is what I think is right, and go on with it. So the attributes are being able to take decision and be true to yourself. Because if you tell stories, then you would never get success. And if you think too much and not able to take sharp decision, then you are unable to be a commander.
Other questions? Yes.
Good morning, sir. My name is Cadet Travis Fuso from the United States.
Sorry, it was too fast.
My name is Cadet Travis Fuso from
Travis.
the United States
Yes.
Military Academy. Could you tell us about a time while you were a commander where you were in a difficult situation, where you had to make a challenging decision, as you were just talking about, and how you came about to make that decision?
An example of a challenging decision and how you made that decision as a commander.
Right. I am going to surprise you, okay? My entire life as a company commander was difficult, okay? The main understanding as a company commander or as a squad commander is the understanding that you are not a general. You have to put your hands deep inside, okay? So one of these challenging situation is from Hebron. I was sitting in my office sketching something, I don't really remember, and soldiers above me on a bridge were playing bullying each other the way stupid males do. And so I had two options. I've analyzed it and I've understood I have two options. Okay? I can do nothing and let them be, or I can go up there and state something. And I think that as a commander or as a leader, you're being measured by not only what you speak about or the values that you speak about, okay, but more the values you act for. And if one of the values I've spoke about is being a true friend and not use your force when not needed, because once again military practice is violent and you should be able to implement violent acts. But we always speak about purity of arms and not being violent when not needed and doing the things only when you have to. And if you don't have to be violent to your friend, to each other, and you are being violent, then you are diverting
Mm-hmm.
the purity of arms. Now it's a small thing. Diluting the purity of arms. It's a small thing. It's a stupid thing, okay? But it means that if you act, you really believe in it. So I went up there, I caught them, threw them each to the other corner, and said, "This is not my company." Having said that, I turned around and went back to my office. And this is a message you send by acting for your values. Don't only speak highly of your morals and values, but act for them. Did that answer your question? Thank you.
Other questions? Yes.
Sir, Michael Howard from West
Michael.
Point. My question is, how do you inspire your troops towards the goal of winning?
You want to repeat?
Yes. How do you inspire the troops towards winning? And we have one more question after this.
You inspire your troops to be winning or to win by wanting to win, by accepting no excuse, okay? Because when you do missions on your regular course of life and your regular course of company's life, okay, many times you don't succeed. You need to be somewhere in a certain hour, or you need to be able to do 1, 2, 3 things within a specific timetable, and you can't do it, or you're not able, or you're missing your deadlines. And you can do one of two things, okay? You can make excuses and explain why you didn't, okay? Or you can sit and see how you do better next time. And if you keep telling your people, okay, that excuses are not accepted, okay, then you are a winner. Then you are aimed to win, because you don't accept the explanations why I didn't achieve. Explanations aren't relevant. What's relevant is whether you made it or you didn't. And if you're aiming there and you're acting towards, you're not excusing, you're not explaining yourself why you didn't do, okay? You lower your head and you say, next time I'll do better. Or you do it another time in order to make it perfect. Then you act for your values. And if your value is winning, then you acted for your values.
We've got time for one last question, if there is one.
Don't feel obligated.
No, there's a hand raised.
Sir, my name is Kevin Moore. I go to
Kevin.
West Point. One of the things at the school, I'm sure with the other academies as well, we always talk about the formal roles of the commander with all the things by doctrine, but I think one of the more important things, at least I've gotten while we're at school, is this informal role of the lower level commander as, say, like a counselor or joking like a financial help. But can you talk more about these informal roles you have towards your soldiers and how you build this role while staying professional at the same time?
Did you get that question?
I got it. I think I got it.
So just talk
So
about.
just repeat it.
Just repeat it, and just to talk about the informal role of a commander. Is that right? Is that right, Kevin? You're not asking him to speak about the informal staffers around. You're asking him to talk about his informal role.
Personally.
Okay.
Well, are you aiming to my role as an reservist officer or as a full duty officer?
Full duty officer.
Full duty, because it's different. Okay. As a reservist, your basis or your state of mind is informality. Okay, when you're a reservist, ranks don't matter. What matter is what you do, how you approach things, and truly what are your abilities. Ranks don't matter in the reservist world. And in full duty, where they do make, they do matter, you have to understand that people are people. And when time is stressed, only those who are obligated to you personally would walk with you towards fire. You will only be able to lead people into fire if they are sure that you would be there for them, if they count on you. And part of setting this mutual obligation is by being part of his life. Okay, if you hear that he struggles financially, then find a way to help him. Whether if you will go personally to speak with his landlord, or speak with his bank manager. Okay, if he has if he doesn't have where to sleep because he fought with his parents, make sure that he has a bed to sleep. Don't go to sleep before you know your people has a place to sleep. Don't go home before you know each and one of your people has a home to go to. And if you understand that informality is the basic for mutual obligation and is part of your military profession, then you will be able to leap over the gap of age and gap of beliefs. And you guys all have way tough job or tough work than I had, okay? Because you come from the academy straight into the field without growing your soldiers at first, without being a soldier, a simple soldier from first place, and it's tougher because the gap between the soldiers and yourself is wider than the gap I had to leap, because I grew up, and we all in the Israeli army grew up from being a soldier. It's a different mindset. It's way wider gap, and you have to understand that this informality is the key to the hearts of your people.
So I just want to make a few quick comments before we thank you. First of all, I want you to be aware that I came to Israel, and my first Israeli experience was the Israel Defense Forces, really. And I don't say this to embarrass Matan, but if I had walked in, I'm older than Matan. The people that I served with were 18, I was 25. How old were you when you were a captain? 24.
24.
So I walked in to introduce myself during preliminary meetings, and I meet my captain. And I can tell you that had he not given me the impression that he would take a global outlook to mentoring through my service, it's highly possible, even probable, that I would not have remained in the States of Israel, because my service in the military was my introduction to Israeli life. And you had that responsibility not just for me, but for 100 or so soldiers, even in our group, and more beyond that.
So it happened.
So the aspects that you're referring to are very essential. I want to give you one concrete example. When we finished in the war, we went straight back on duty. It's not like other wars where people go to war and then they are released from service for X number of months, years, or even in perpetuity. And Matan, I remember I requested a meeting with, and the meeting was so that I could go home and visit my family in the United Kingdom for a week. And I sat down with him and I told him I'm not getting an answer from the welfare officer and I want to go home. And it's time for me to go home, and it's one of my rights to go home for that week. And for the first time I looked at him across the table, and he was actually almost falling asleep with exhaustion. He was truly, truly exhausted, ran down, worn out, and had any number of responsibilities beyond Benjamin traveling home to see his family. But the next day he told me I was going. In other words, he took that personal welfare issue, he took it on board, he handled it, and he sent me home for a week. And I can tell you, had he not sent me home for that week, he'd probably have lost me. Probably have lost me in terms of my respect for him and the deference for him. And I'm very grateful to him for doing that. And I think it is central to service. I also want you to know that your command about how people are to communicate with the soldiers in English about weapons did not transmit to me. The commanders did not tell me the instructions in Hebrew, and so to this day, as I've said to a number of people, I actually have no idea what caliber the mag is. I don't know any of it, I don't understand it. I know how to use the thing, but I can't tell you numbers or details, so sometimes the chain of command gets broken.
Noted.
And I also want to conclude with a very short phrase that you used that was actually one of the first Hebrew phrases that I understood, which was that when you were asked... No, not you're going home. No, I did understand that. Which was, you said a phrase which was "Ha'chaim sheli hem ha'chayalim sheli," which means my life are my soldiers.
Sure.
And I think that that's very central to who you've been. It's very central to who you are, and it's certainly an ethos that's been transmitted successfully to the right people. And of course your legacy continues. So we very much appreciate all that you've done, all of your service. Thank you for being here.